With nearly 12,000 tools available, selecting the right MarTech can be challenging. Meet the MarTech Intelligence Reports, free buyer's guides exploring specific platforms, including purchase considerations, leading players, adoption trends, and more. No matter where you are in the purchase journey, MarTech Intelligence Reports can help.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's panel on how AI and data activation deliver unforgettable customer experiences. We're so happy to have you with us today. I'm Len Devanna, Chief Marketing Officer at CorticX, and I am humbled to be your moderator for today's discussion and to be joined by an amazing group of industry thought leaders. Joining us today, Annette Franz, CEO of CX Journey, Inc., Sav Khetan, Vice President of Product Marketing at Telium, and Jiaxi Zhu, Head of Analytics at Google. As a quick reminder, as we go through our conversation today, if you have questions or comments during the session, please drop them in the chat. We'll have some time at the end for questions and answers. This is going to be a great discussion, so let's jump right into it. Team, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Excited to get the thoughts on this important topic from all of you. Let's jump right into it with a quick hit. What is one lesson you've learned, maybe the hard way, about turning data into better customer experience? Jiaxi, let's start with you.
Yeah, I would say one lesson that I learned is data coverage is very important because because I don't want to have a biased read on how my customers feel. And one of the issues that I ran into in the past was that we relied on surveys to understand customer experience and satisfaction. And only a fraction of people responded. And when we anchored on decisions on that response, sometimes the decisions didn't really make sense. So one lesson from that experience is that definitely make sure that you have good data coverage and make sure that you have a representative insight.
Fantastic. Sav.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. One lesson I've learned is that, especially with AI now, the last 30 seconds of data might be able to give you just as much output or outcome as all the data you have about a customer. We have multiple customers that are using recent data and right data rather than all the data they have. And it's actually simplifying their experiences, their stack, their implementation, and still giving them the same or better outcome. So it's kind of surprising how we've been all focusing on getting all the data we have and putting it all in one place and trying to use it. Whereas now with AI, you can actually jump forward quite a bit and get very current very fast.
Yeah, we'll talk a lot about data cleanliness as we go through our conversation today, I'm sure. Annette, what are your thoughts?
I don't want to bring up something that seems like a no-brainer, but I think data alone isn't enough. I mean, we have to do something with it. We have to take action. And this is something that we've talked about for years. And I feel like, you're beating a dead horse by saying it. But I think a lot of folks are just happy that they've got so much data, but they don't do anything with it. I mean, you have to synthesize it. You have to contextualize it. What does it mean? Tell the story. What story is it telling? You've got to socialize it. You've got to share it with the people who need to, do something with it. And then you've got to operationalize it. So you have to do something with it. You have to use it to, design and deliver great experiences for both employees and for customers. So, my lesson over the years, and it's just one that we have to keep repeating, is do something with the data that you have.
Yeah, it's a great point. Data is not the what, but it's the how, right? It's part of the how, and how do we harness that? And we'll go deeper into that. Let's keep this interactive with a poll question for our audience. If we could bring up the first poll, and just if you haven't done it, gang, for folks in the audience, you'll be asked to join the audience to participate. Please do so. Please enter your first name and click on the Join Audience button, and click on the polls icon in the top right corner of the video window. You should see the poll come up on the right side of the panel, and please select one of the options. And we'll give everyone 20 or 30 seconds to go through it, but this poll follows that conversation nicely. So let's bring up that first poll if we haven't already. What is your biggest data activation challenge today? 4 different options. Collecting the data. We're not really gathering the right data. Accessible. We've got the data, but it's really hard for us to reach it. Actionable. We're slow to act on the insights. We struggle to personalize or leverage that data at scale. Or trust, and I've seen this one a lot. We've got data, but we don't have a high degree of confidence in it. So if you don't mind, just take 20 or so seconds to click on one of those as it resonates with you. Team, I'd be curious while the audience votes. Any bets here, or where we think people are going to land?
I think either accessible or action.
Yeah, I would agree. Accessible. We have all these legacy and disparate systems, data infrastructure. So yeah, absolutely accessibility.
All right, it'll be interesting. I was going to be the odd man out and say trust. I've seen a lot of companies much data, but they don't have a high degree of confidence in it. So it'll be interesting what the audience
quality.
says.
Yeah,
for sure.
You know, while we're waiting, Annette, I was going to say one of the things you said that really sparked something in me that I've always believed. People say data is your biggest competitive advantage, but I've always believed that it can be your biggest competitive advantage, but you have to make it that way.
Yeah,
it doesn't start out that way. In fact, it's more risk and cost than anything else when it starts out, right?
Exactly right. So it's interesting to look at the results. We've got the majority with accessible. So we've got the data, but it's difficult to access. Followed by action, followed by collecting, and trust sort of at the bottom. Fascinating spread. Really interesting. And just as a reminder, friends, as we go through, if you do have specific questions, drop them in the Q&A. And if you want to tag a specific question to someone particular on the panel, be sure to tag them. Let's keep it going. The reality check. Let's talk about AI proofing your stack. So, Sav, I've heard you say before that a great stack starts with business outcomes, not an architectural diagram. What's the biggest mistake you see brands make when trying to AI proof their stack?
Yeah, I love this question. So, what happens is they'll pick a architecture approach and they'll think that approach is the right answer to their solution, when in reality, based on your business, based on your customers, your use cases, your legacy data systems, that approach might not actually work. You have to be very open-minded and you have to be willing to adapt as you grow. And one of the things that, for example, everybody thought they would need is that AI is going to run in the middle, that all my AI is going to run in one place. I'm going to put all this data here, and then all these models are going to run in the center. And immediately they find out that if you do that, the models are very expensive, they're very cumbersome to run, and you can't be flexible. And suddenly more and more smaller, more efficient models are showing up all around your stack rather than in one place. And now you have to adapt, and you have to be able to be interoperable with these models rather than have them all in one place. So already we are seeing Gen AI has been a very big disruptor for even architecture. And you got to let go of this idea that there's one silver bullet. You have to be very adaptable and flexible with your approach, and you have to learn as you go. So that's what I would recommend, is don't think that just because you had an architecture you started with, that's going to be the right answer.
I suspect you'd agree. I think so many brands they go all in and they look at AI, as you say, as a magic solution. It's going to solve so much for us. But in fact, it's a piece of the stack. It's a very, very important piece of the stack. But at the end of the day, it's just a piece of the stack.
100%. It's definitely one more how and not what, like you said about the data.
For sure. Annette, Jiaxi, anything to add?
I think this might be at the other end of the spectrum, but I think some folks treat AI as a threat, right? So they lock down their systems and they can't adapt as the AI evolves, and they can't integrate new tools efficiently and effectively. So maybe that's at the other end of the spectrum, and maybe there aren't that many brands that look at it that way. But I've seen and read about those situations as well.
I would say we have enough customers that are not jumping into AI right now in regulated industries. In EMEA region, people are being cautious. And I think you're right, it's all over the spectrum. But it's hard across the board.
Yes.
It harkens me back. I'll date myself, hence the grays, but it harkens me back to the early days of web. And I remember early in web, there was a whole movement that was like, wait a second, this is threatening to me. I don't understand this medium. And those that embraced the new technology thrived, and those that didn't sort of, say, died by the wayside. It's a little cold for a Wednesday morning, but they did not thrive. AI is the same bit. Yes, you need to have guardrails, but the opportunity is to lean in, understand it, and figure out how you can capitalize on it for your business. Not be afraid of it, to your point. So.
It's coming whether you want it or not.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly right. Jiaxi, anything to add, friend?
Yeah, I would say one thing that's very important for practitioners in this space is to really understand what type of business use cases AI can help unlock. I think that's going to clear up a lot of the scare. And because most of the people are not scared of AI itself, it's more about what AI can do to the business or to the process of analysis. Once folks are able to anchor AI in specific use cases and really see the value of that, I think that's going to dispel a lot of the concerns and scare around this trend.
Yeah, and there's an interesting through line in everything we're saying here. And that is, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're building a website, implementing a CRM, it doesn't matter what initiative you're going after, but if you're not starting with the 3 or 4 objectives, what are you trying to accomplish? Forget the how we're going to do it. Forget the plumbing for a second. What exactly, from a business perspective, are we trying to do? If you don't ground in that as your North Star, you will forever wander a path, right? Maybe aimlessly.
Yes. It's the most risky technology because you can keep experimenting for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. You have to have a clear end in mind, otherwise you're gone.
Yeah, and I think, and Annette, playing off your point, I think quick wins are really key as well, right? If you go the old-fashioned waterfall approach, you run the risk of building hesitation, building fear. If you are solving things quickly, rolling out solutions quickly, it's a nice way to satisfy an organization as you're making progress. Let's talk a little bit about culture, right? Because Annette, you helped us talk. You poked to this topic. Cultural is an interesting bit when it comes to AI, when it comes to data. I know you've worked with teams where data is on one side of a spectrum. It's either overwhelming or it's underutilized. How do you help brands zero in on the right data, not just more data?
Yeah, and I think this is an important question because I think a lot of people think that more is better, but more is not necessarily better. And I think really the words that we're looking for to describe the data that we need to use today is really, I like to use this phrase, contextually relevant. So that's what we've got to focus on. That's how we should define the right data, right? So I think 3 things that brands need to do really are to start with the experience, right? Whether that's, whether that's via the feedback that they're getting or the breadcrumbs of data that customers are leaving behind, or you're doing some journey mapping, focus, start with that experience and what you're learning there, not with metrics. And I think too many folks start with those metrics, but we want to start with that experience because we really want to understand where customers are won and where they're lost, and then use the data to highlight those moments of truth and understand what goes well and what doesn't. So I think that's one piece of looking at the right data. I think we also have to think about outcomes. How's the data going to inform an action or a decision, and what is that going to lead to? I think one of the big things that I see time and time again when people start looking at data is like, we just got to do something. We've got all this data, but really linking it to outcomes, linking it to outcomes for employees, linking it to outcomes for customers, and then linking it to especially outcomes for the business, right? And so I think that's an important piece that is often overlooked. Why are we doing this, and what's the end game here, right? And then I think one other thing, and this is, I worked for a startup almost 10 years ago in this space, really focusing and prioritizing predictive analytics, right? What data is going to help us determine what customers are likely to do next, and then use that and design for that, right? Use those analytics to design for that. So predictive and prescriptive analytics, I think, is an important part. And again, we have to think about what's the right data to be able to use that analytics to really design a better experience for our customers. So again, right data is what I define as contextually relevant. And so you have to really do the homework and start with focusing on the experience and what's happening, what's going well and what's not, where are we losing customers, where are we winning customers, or where are they continuing down this path, to really define contextually relevant.
I might be beating this point, but if again, there's a common theme here, and that is, what are you trying to accomplish? And I think in industry, we all start going so fast, and everything's a priority. And when everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. But just always grounding and challenging yourself and challenging your teams. What are we trying to accomplish here, and how are we going to get there? And what is the role of data to get there?
It's like, so everybody, I have this awesome quote that I love, which is, when it comes to data platforms, 5 years ago, there were 2 credit cards at the table. Now there's 5 credit cards at the table, right? Every business group has now got a very big part of this agenda. And honestly, the same data set, if you think will serve different purposes, it's not exactly that. You need different parts of that data to serve the different purposes. And like you said, if you're not understanding the end goal, you're going to just use everything, and there's going to be way more noise and way more issues than there's going to be value. So I actually feel people are starting to appreciate this a little bit more, but it's still, you can get lost in it before you even realize.
Sometimes less is more. Jiaxi, let's turn back to you. We talk a lot about collecting clean data, but how do you know when it's actually useful? What KPIs or benchmarks do you use to assess quality and impact?
I would say yes. There's 2 things. The first thing, which is bridging what Annette just raised about building a data-first culture, it's crucial to embed the data into the decision making, because only when you're actively using that data to drive meaningful outcomes and decisions and move the needle, then that's a gold standard to know that the data is driving actual value and you are using data the right way. Now, in terms of what KPIs, specific metrics and so on and so forth, I would say the ones that come top of mind is, number 1, data coverage. We're talking about customer experience, and customer experience, there's different interpretations of what customer experience is. Different people think differently about customer experience. So if we're not collecting from a large enough sample size, it's going to lead to biased decision making and potentially biased customer outcomes as well. On top of this, it's also super important to have consistency across the data. So one example that I ran into was when we have different customer experience surveys. For example, even if the questions are framed differently, they might be asking for roughly the same thing, but the framing of the question, the choices that's available in the survey, that's going to have a significant influence on how customers choose to respond, and that's going to skew the data quality as well. So just to mention a super specific example, there was one instance where we evolved our customer satisfaction survey from a 5-point scale to a 7-point scale. And that single change led to a 4% difference in customer satisfaction rate, which is quite significant. So just think about that. If that's applied at a larger scale, it may have wider implications on how we look at the data. So ensure that the data is consistently defined, which is the quality part. And then the last part, which is how are we using the data in decision making, and how many decisions are anchored on narrative versus the actual data. So going back to my first point, I would say that completes the life cycle of data and activation and KPIs for looking at that.
Be sure you're making decisions based on the right data and the right data, not an emotion, not what your belly tells you is right.
The other thing that's happening is the scale of data is pretty crazy right now. Like, the amount of data that's being generated is so high compared to even 10 years ago, that if you're not getting it right when you're collecting it, that all your downstream system gets affected, right? Whether it's context like labels, whether it's quality, whether it's hygiene, consistency, errors in the data itself. That's the first thing we see is some of our customers are collecting 500-600 million events a day. And if you're not organizing that well on the way in, you're it's everything downstream is gone, and then you're spending so much time and money fixing that downstream.
I was
Yeah, and
working with
that's a oh,
Please,
sorry,
Annette, sorry.
Kevin.
No, please.
I was just going to say that's a huge volume of data, right? And I think we have to go back to how much of that actually drives
Yep.
meaningful action and outcomes, right? So
Yep.
I think that really puts it, the lens that we need to look at that data.
100%.
The exact point I was going to make. Let's jump back to another poll, team. So please bring up our second one. Again, just click on the polls icon in the top right of the video window. You see the poll come up and on the side panel, and please select one of the options. Our next poll question is about your MarTech stack. So which layer of your MarTech stack needs the most work? Ingestion, capturing and collecting data. Integration, connecting data across systems. Analytics, actually pulling the right insights from the data. Or activation, orchestration, personalization, and next best actions. I'll jump in on this one. I think it's all going to be about number 4. What do you think, panel?
I think it's going to be about integration. Given the answer to the first poll about accessibility, I think it's going to be all about integration.
Yep. I think exactly. Like it's been 10 years and integration stays at the top on the number one issue that people are having, especially with the disparate systems. And activation is a function of integration now anyway. But yes, hands down, the number one issue right now is integration, in my opinion. But
Josh,
ingestion is one that gets ignored a lot, but it's actually quite important. Like just like what Jiaxi was saying about collection, that's all up there. That's the one that I feel people underestimate, and they don't put enough thought into that portion.
Okay, well, I'm not going to challenge the panel. You're the experts. I was wrong last time. So let's take a look at the results and see if I was wrong again. Indeed, I was. So our number one contender is integration.
Over half. Yeah.
Over half. Actually, followed by activation. Interesting. But
yes.
No, integration is the number one. It's the big pole in the tent for sure. It's what's top of mind for everybody. Followed by activation, followed by the ingestion, followed by analytics. Very good. Super, super interesting insights. It's clear this is top of mind for everyone, and we're all focused on solving this problem. Let's talk about silos for a second. In my experience, silos are just they're very detrimental to business, organizational silos. I work in sales, I work in marketing, I work in service. Never shall we talk. Sav, let's jump to you. Integration, you were talking about integration. It's no longer just about data flowing. It's now about data flowing fast, and with consent across the organization. What's your take on how organizations can break silos without losing control?
Yeah, I'm going to reference what Annette said earlier. It's about culture, it's about training, it's about mindset. Like it's not about technology anymore. Everybody needs data that somebody else has. And you might not have to move it around. You might not have to organize it. You just need a way to work with it. And I think especially as we're pivoting to AI, training people, helping them understand the value, helping them understand what it means to have your data in a way that other people can benefit from it. And then every group needs to own their own consent goals, because data moves so fast across the entire value chain that if you're expecting only one group to take care of consent, you're definitely creating risks across the entire organization. So I would say culture, training, and mindset are the 3 biggest things that I'm finding that people and process, that help really break these silos nowadays.
Yeah, and I'm going to echo that, right? If you say culture, that means that, and I've always said silos are a leadership issue, right? Because it's the behaviors and it's the actions and it's the things that leaders do that the rest of the organization looks at, that employees look at. And so I think that if we're going to call out culture, and we absolutely have to, because clearly the CEO hasn't deliberately designed a customer-centric organization. And if we're customer-centric, we're certainly data-driven. We're a collaborative organization because we're all working together for the common good, which is making sure that the customers achieve the outcomes they need to achieve, which ultimately leads to great outcomes for customers. So yeah, I'm putting this one on leadership and the culture that they've designed.
Yeah, I would like to chime in with a specific example. So, how that culture translates into the disconnects that we may have seen. So one example in some organizations is that I see that, sales may have their own customer experience survey or an analytics, marketing has their own, and then customer support has their own. And then they all generate their own reports, insights, and so on and so forth. And in some cases, they may conflict each other. So one customer support organization may report that we have great customer experience, but at the same time, the sales teams might say, our customer experience, there seems to be a large gap. So that just goes to show that customer experience is about the holistic customer journey, not about single touch points. And that's where I think a lot of the organizations fall short on.
Yeah.
I'm gonna jump on this point that you're all making, and that you talk about top-down culture-centric organizations, and I agree. I totally agree with that. I would suggest, though, Jiaxi, to your point, and I've seen that movie 100 times. We all have. They're doing this with data over here. They're doing surveys over here. We're all serving the customer, but independently. I think the onus is on us to break down the silos of communication. If we are not reaching across the aisle, if I'm in marketing and I'm not talking to my sales brethren and I'm not talking to my service brethren and aligning on how we're engaging customers and how we're taking surveys, what are the right touch points, how are we aggregating our data, we're making an enormous mistake and we're propagating that siloed problem.
Leadership alignment is critical here. Yeah, agreed.
100%.
I love it. Great point. You cannot fix this thing from bottom up. It has to be top down.
Yeah, for sure. Let's stay on culture a little bit. Annette, not everyone in the audience works in data or even in a customer-centric culture. In fact, I suspect many don't. If that's the case, from your perspective, what levers can they pull to start shifting the mindset or making progress from the middle, if you will?
Yeah. And I often refer to what middle managers deal with as pushing the noodle up the hill because they're not getting all the information. They're not getting all the support that they need to live that customer-centric culture, or they're the ones who are trying to say, listen, this is what we need to do and here's why we need to do it. So why isn't our culture already, customer driven? So I think you may have mentioned this earlier, Len, too, is starting small, starting with some quick wins, whether it's a single touch point or a single interaction that customers have, and demonstrating the impact that, focusing on, the customer and the data that we have and using that to drive the experience that, customers expect is huge. So small, starting small with some quick wins. I think they also need to be sure that they tell the human story, right? I think we focus too much on metrics and data and blah, blah, blah numbers, right? I think we have to make sure that we tell those human stories and talk about customer pain points and how that impacts the customer, but also how those pain points impact the business, right? I think governance is something also that's overlooked, and I think it's a scary word for a lot of people. But when we talk about a governance in culture transformation, customer experience, and employee experience transformation, what we're doing is we're bringing together these cross-functional groups and cross-functional departments and building bridges across these departments. And again, like I said earlier when we talked about culture, is really that a customer-centric organization is one that's collaborative, and we can't have silos. We can't work in our individual teams and departments and have consistent experience across the journey if we don't do that. So having these customer experience champions and these committees through your governance structure will certainly help to break down some of those silos. And this is a way that middle managers can get involved and really show that, hey, this is what we're doing and this is how we're doing it, and this is the impact that we're having. And I think last but certainly not least, and I mentioned this earlier too, is really talking about outcomes and again talking about outcomes for employees and customers, but talking about outcomes for the business, because that's what your executives and your upper management, your leaders are looking for is, okay, well, we need to think about how this is going to impact the business and what it means. So everybody just needs to remember that we need to link everything to business outcomes, because that's the language that they speak and that's the language that they hear.
I'm going to play off your point briefly. We're coming up on time for our panel discussion. We're going to get into Q&A, and there's a ton of questions coming in. So thank you, gang. I'm going to get to one more, but let me just want to put a bow on that one. I've learned this over in my time. If you are talking customer experience, if that is your core narrative, I think you are making a mistake, because that'll fall on deaf ears. That sounds like marketing fluff. customer experience is growth. Growth is what resonates with the C-suite, with your leadership team. And to be clear, I walk around talking about customer experience all the time. It is my religion. But I always anchor that conversation in growth, because that's what resonates. That's what gets people attention. Let me go one more quick round with the panel, if I may, and then we'll jump into audience questions. This one's a tricky one. Sav, I'll start with you. What's a common myth around building a modern MarTech stack that you wish we would all just stop believing?
Oh, that this new tool is going to solve my problems. Everybody thinks that this new hot tool that's come is just going to fix all the problems, when it's not at all about the tool. It's all about people and process and strategy and outcomes. And it's, I wish people would just stop believing that, oh, I saw this video, I saw this webinar, this tool is going to solve my problem. It's not going to happen. And I say that as a MarTech vendor, by the way. So.
Very good. I appreciate the candor. Jiaxi.
I would say placing too little emphasis on small wins, but then over anchoring on that big bang. So I see organizations spend months and years building something in the hopes that that's going to solve everything, but then overlook, I would say, the small baby steps that they need to take. Let's say maybe to fix one specific customer issue, versus trying to have a whole transformation program that takes multiple years.
Very good. Annette, get us over the finish line here.
Absolutely. I would go back to, we said earlier, more data doesn't mean anything, right? I would say the same thing about this. More tools don't mean better marketing, right? The fact is that marketing and the MarTech stack isn't really about having all of the tools. It's about having the right tools, right? The right tools, I think, is the important thing to consider here.
Fantastic conversation. We could do this for hours. You are all brilliant. So thank you for the time, for the perspective. Let's get into some audience questions. As I say, there are an absolute ton of them. I will put them out there. Anyone can jump in, please. What is a real way you're seeing AI actually drive a better customer experience, not just do something gratuitous like generating email subject lines? Anybody want to jump in on that one?
I think.
Sure. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Josh. Go ahead.
Okay, I could share an experience where I think AI is actually increasing the access to more data and more insights. So one example is I've seen organizations use AI to mine call transcripts and all of the interactions that were previously out of reach using traditional approaches, right? So all of these touch points, they complete the customer journey, and AI is a powerful tool to help you sift through that.
Yeah, you took my example, Jiaxi, but also just similar to that, we have customers who are running AI on incoming customer reviews, and immediately they know whether it's a positive, negative, but also whether it's about shipping or about product quality or about the product itself, and that's way more actionable than all the unstructured text that comes in usually. So yeah, it's cutting the friction between human and data or human and technology. I think Gen AI is sitting in the middle and reducing that friction, which is helping a lot.
And I'll just add that I've seen it, and I mentioned earlier the concept or the tools of predictive analytics and prescriptive analytics. I've seen companies use it for that, and I think that's just a great way to get out and get ahead. I think that blends in nicely with journey orchestration, which I've seen some brands do very successfully.
Very nice. Let's jump to our next question. This one comes from Julie. Thank you, Julie. What roles within an organization should be creating time to analyze the data, to look for opportunities? Should there be a dedicated team or dedicated roles in large organizations? In other words, as example, how do they interact with IT from accessing the data perspective, from marketing, from actioning the data perspective?
Ooh.
I'll just jump in here. My personal perspective is I think there should be a dedicated team to do that. There's so much to be done, and there's so many. I don't think, and I forget who mentioned, maybe Josh, you did, like there's different departments asking for different things and coming up with different answers and different outcomes and stuff. I think if we have one team that's solely focused on understanding the business requirements, understanding the business case, understanding what the outcomes are, understanding all the data, where the data is coming from, the tools. I mean, I feel personally that should be a dedicated team that's focused on that.
Yeah, if you're a large organization and you can afford to have that, I think the data engineering discipline is very complex. And with large data sets, there's so much you have to do. I don't think the business teams can actually do that. And if they have their own data engineers within the business teams, then they just need a way to really be in sync. But either way, you need somebody with that skill set if you're a large organization. I don't see a way around that.
Yeah, I would say +1 data engineering teams crucial to be cross-functional and own that. I would say both the infrastructure and also the data governance and definition across organizations. Separately, on top of that, I also know that there are teams that manage the analytics and insights generation on top of the data. I think that's more of a case-by-case basis, but in the specific, I would say, domain of customer experience, it is crucial to have one overall analytics team that oversees the entire customer journey for reasons that I mentioned earlier.
Thank you for that, Jiaxi. Honest to goodness, the questions are pouring in. We're not going to get to all of them, so I apologize to the audience. But let's keep this conversation going. Follow myself, or connect with myself, connect with our panelists on LinkedIn. Let's make this the start of a conversation, not the end of a conversation. Let's jump to one from Christina. We saw that integration was high on one of our polls. What are some of your favorite tools for integration? Anybody want to jump into that one first?
I mean, I used to be a Telium customer. I came over to Telium because I believed in the power. So I know it's a shameless plug, but I genuinely believe that you need a tool like Telium to integrate. So apologies for promoting a tool, but I believe in it.
You should be proud of your product, and joining the organization that's building it is a huge testament. Annette, Jiaxi, any thoughts on your favorite tools for integrating data?
I'm going with Sav.
Ha!
Can't counter him here, right?
Fair enough.
I would say choosing the right tool for data integration, there's also a lot of organizational context to that, because I also know that many large organizations have their own legacy systems, and in some cases it might be more challenging to adopt one data integration tool versus the other. So well, I would say I don't have a favorite, because a lot of that depends on the business reality rather than my personal, I would say, likes versus dislikes.
Yeah.
Let's get at least one more of these in. We'll see if we can squeeze two. And this is a great question that comes from Tom. Thank you, Tom. What insights can you provide on using AI personas to conduct market research and best practices?
I'll jump in on that one. I'll just say that, great, you've got data and you've got AI who's, to develop those personas, but nothing beats talking to customers, right? So I would say you have to complement that with going out and doing customer interviews, confirming what you have developed with AI, and that's the bottom line. You have to talk to customers. That's the only way that you're truly going to understand if you've got it right and you're truly understanding your customers. So please talk to customers as well.
Yeah, data and technology has this way of averaging things out, and then you'll find that you don't actually find any human that fits that average. And so if you talk to people, I think you develop more empathy. If you work through AI and data, then you tend to not develop the empathy you need to actually do the stuff. Yeah. So highly recommend at least talking to some people.
I would say talking to people is a great starting point. The AI personas is a great way to scale that knowledge and scale that skill set across a large organization, because it's going to be hard for everybody in the sales or marketing or customer support organization to talk to every single customer. So in that case, having those personas codified and democratized across the organization actually helps, I would say, build that knowledge base across.
Great point.
Fantastic conversation. I'm going to wrap with one last question. This one's going to be a tricky one. It's going to be a speed dating round. So our session title, our panel title is How AI and Data Activation Deliver Unforgettable Customer Experiences. Let's go around the room. Annette, let's start with you. What is the one piece of advice you would give someone early in this journey?
I would say build the right culture. You cannot AI your culture, right? You build the right culture, and that starts at the top. If you have a culture that focuses on putting people first, the rest of it's going to come that much easier. If you don't have that, you're going to be butting heads. You're not, I just, that's my best advice. And speed dating around here is build the right culture.
Very nice. Sav?
Yeah, I'm going to go against what I said earlier and say, at least in small ways, start experimenting, because you have to get over the fear and you have to learn how to work with this stuff. It's here, and you gotta embrace it.
Jiaxi?
My advice is to start embedding data and AI in decision making. As you're putting together your next marketing strategy, think about how it may move customer experience one way or the other, and how that stacks up against potential revenue gains or losses. I think as you start embedding that in decision making, that elevates, I would say, the leadership focus and importance on data and AI in the mix.
Amazing. First of all, thank you to our panelists. You are fantastic, amazing people with incredible perspective. Thank you to the amazing team at MarTech for bringing this conference together, for bringing us all together, for facilitating this conversation. So thank you, and thanks to the audience for taking time to join. We are smarter together, and we appreciate the gift and the investment of time. Please take a moment to rate the session. Feel free to connect with myself or the panelists on LinkedIn. You can tell we're a passionate bunch, and please do click the Dig In Deeper button to jump to the Dig Deeper tab to get to the next session. Unlock the power of underutilized data hiding right in front of your team. Thank you all very much.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Join the MarTech conference November 4th for one powerful day of real-world strategies and live expert insights. Scan the QR code on screen to register now for free.